Thank you for joining us today at Homestead for Life. Today we are going to can chicken pot pie filling so that it is just about ready to go when you're ready to make chicken pot pie. So what you're going to need for this are, of course, your normal canning utensils, right? You're going to need your funnel, you're going to need your canning spatula or stabby stick, you're going to need your little magnet dropper to get your lids out of your simmering pan. You're going to need your jar grabber. You're going to need jars, lids, rings, all those essential canning tools. And of course, your electric Carey Canner. Don't leave home without it. It is a wonderful, 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 convenient resource. And then you need your ingredients. So I have already prepped all of my ingredients here. So I've got my chicken already cooked and shredded or chopped. I've got my chopped onion, carrots, celery, green beans. Most people put peas in their chicken pot pie. We don't eat peas in this house, so we're not doing that. We've got thyme, ground pepper, salt. We are also going to use a little bit of butter so that we can saute the onions. You don't can butter. You're going to see a lot of recipes online. People do it. It's everywhere. How to can butter, how to can milk. All the educational resources, all the schools, the National Home for Food Preservation, all of them tell you don't do it. So I don't want any kind of responsibility on anyone poisoning themselves. So I'm going to stick with them. What you do in your personal space is all you. If you want to get into Rebel canning, awesome. Awesome, awesome. Probably actually an amazing YouTube handle, Rebel Canner. But I try not to get into that, at least on my channel. So what we are going to do is take a little bit of butter and saute our onions and get started. To get started, we've already melted our butter. So now we're going to add in our onions. And we're going to get these all cooked up with a few other things. And they are all going to cook together until our onions are translucent. So we've got our onions. We've got our carrots. Carrots take a little bit longer to cook, so normally you could probably wait until you can them, but I'm going to add them in now. I do like soft carrots in my stews and things like that. And I know chicken pot pie is not a stew, but it still falls in that soup category. So I'm going to get these all kind of flat along the bottom, kind of level so we don't have them all piled up and not cooking evenly. And then I'm going to add my celery. So I want my celery to blend in with the other flavors. I want the seasoning to really come out so that when we mix in everything else, all those flavors are going to be combined really well. We've got all of our flavors going. So we are just going to kind of stir this periodically and let it simmer away until our onions are translucent. Now that our onions are translucent, we're going to add in the rest of our ingredients and we're going to bring it all up to a boil. So the first thing we're going to add in is our chicken broth. So you don't have to use the store-bought stuff. If you have your own homemade chicken stock, rock on. If you are with us a couple weeks ago, we just made turkey stock, but I already had this open in the fridge, so we're going to use it. We are also going to add in our chopped green beans. So you'll notice these are a couple different colors. We grew these in our own garden last year. So these are asparagus beans and some kind of long purple green beans because I love the color purple. I will buy random vegetable seeds if the plant grows purple. So they taste the same, but they're pretty. So it's fun. We're going to add in our chicken. This is probably a little bit more chicken for this recipe than normal, but that's what I had in the package. So this is what we cooked. We pre-cooked the chicken. So we already cooked it in the Instapot. We shredded it, cut it up real small. So it's ready to go into our jars and our chicken pot pie when all that's done. Right? So we've got our onions, our carrots, our celery, our green beans, our chicken. Now we just need our seasonings. and a little bit more water. There is not enough what will be gravy in our chicken pot pie right now. We'll talk about the gravy consistency later though. All right, so our seasonings, we're going to use some salt, we're going to use some ground black pepper, and we are going to use thyme. What we would also love to use, if I hadn't run out of it, would be garlic powder. I don't know how I ran out of garlic powder. It doesn't seem like my life would allow that to happen, but here we are, garlic powderless. So we're going to use our other seasonings, add some more water because the water is a little bit low, and get this up to a boiling. Okay, so we mentioned gravy and gravy consistency, right? So normally your chicken pot pie has a better consistency. It's got sort of a creamy undertones, I suppose you'd say, and it doesn't look like a stew. This looks like a stew, okay? When you're canning, you are not going to add starches or thickeners, okay? We're going to add those later when we go to prepare this to cook, okay? So I know you're going to see a lot of recipes out there that include that in the recipes as you go, but on the list of approved canning no-nos, if you will, is no starches and no thickeners. So no flour, no cornstarch, things like that if you're pressure canning. Okay. Now for things like jellies and jams that you're going to water bath can, obviously you're going to add thickeners to those, right? Because you want those to thicken up. We are going to pressure can this, so no thickeners. Okay. And again, if you want to be a rebel canner, rock on with your bad self. I'm not going to encourage that because I don't want any type of emotional responsibility if anything goes wrong. I want to pause for a second here and talk about what I've got going on in the background. So I already have my lids in a pot of water on low, getting the glue soft. I already have my jars with some water in them in my canner under steam, getting the water in the jars warm. So now we're going to take those jars out very carefully, pour the water out of them, keep it in the jar or in the canner, and we're going to set these out so that we can fill them. So now we have hot jars. We have hot chicken pot pie filling. So it is now up to a boiling point. It's been boiling for a few minutes. It's going to finish processing when it's in its jars all together. So we're not terribly worried about how much time it's all going to boil together now. What we're more worried about is that everything is well mixed. So we're going to have everything in each jar. So all of our seasonings, all of our vegetables, all of those things, right? So carefully getting all the jars unloaded so that we can fill them. Okay, so we are going to fill all of our jars to 1 inch of headspace. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to fill them pretty well. Then we are going to take our stabby spatula and stab it all down real well, which is going to bust all those air pockets, move everything around, get it all shifted and shuffled about, and it's going to make more space. Inevitably, it makes more space. So once we have that, then we'll add more and top it off and get it back to that 1 inch of headspace. You don't typically want much more than whatever the prescribed amount of headspace is, airspace in the top, because honestly, it's just a waste of space in the jar. However, you don't want less. You for sure do not want less than the designated amount of headspace, airspace at the top of your jar, because you need room for the things to boil, okay? So hot air expands, cold air shrinks. There's a better word, I don't know it. Cold air shrinks. So you need room for that expansion in the jar. Air is going to escape even with the lids and the rims. It's fine, but you want to leave space for that. So we're going to get all these jars filled up and then move on to the next step. We are almost done except for the processing. So we are going to use our distilled white vinegar. We're going to wipe the rims of our jars off. right? This is going to help make sure that there's no debris, there's no crumbs or soup or filling or anything else, any dust that got on those lids or on those rims that's going to keep your lid from sealing perfectly. I do this every time and I've had almost perfect success in my jar sealing. So I strongly suggest it. Then of course we're going to use our magnet to get our lids out of the hot water. Don't put your fingers in there. They are in hot water. You've got hot jars with hot food in them and hot lids going into a hot canner. So please, please, please be careful. But I'm going to pop our lids on here. We're going to grab our rings and tighten them to all of our jars. And then we are going to carefully place them in our canner. So timing on the canner, now that we've got all of our jars ready to go, we are going to load them up. We have our rack in the bottom of the canner, so these are not just sitting flat on the bottom of the canner. There's about 12 cups of water in here. We're going to close the canner, we're going to put it on exhaust, and we are going to set the canner or set the timer on high and 75 minutes for pints. It's 90 if you're doing quarts, but we're just doing pints at 75 minutes. And then you hit start and away it goes. Now, once it's built up a good head of steam and the temperature's right, it's going to start about a 10-minute countdown. It'll say E10, it'll go down to E0, and in that time, as close to E0 as you can, you are going to come and flip the exhaust to airtight. Sorry, you're going to flip the exhaust to airtight. All right, we are down to E0. So we're going to flip this to airtight. And then once that pressure builds up in there and gets to that right mark, our countdown timer is going to start going from 75 minutes down. Once the timer runs out and it beeps, we're going to come back and we're going to unplug it. You're going to leave it for at least an hour before you open it up. We're going to leave it overnight. But that's it. So tomorrow we'll open her up. We'll check our jars. And if everything's sealed up, they're going to get labeled and put into storage. If this is your first time canning, I do want to call out, I get the question a lot. Once it builds up pressure, it's going to steam pretty much the whole time. Okay, so if you see a lot of steam coming out, don't worry about it. That's why you put so much water in it, right? So it's fine. It's absolutely normal. And we will check back and unplug it in just about 75, 80 minutes once it builds up the right pressure and starts our countdown. All right, it's been 75 minutes. Our timer has gone off, so we are going to unplug our canner and go to sleep. And tomorrow we will see how successful we were. See you then. Good morning. We are going to check our chicken pot pie filling. So they are all done. So they sat in overnight, if you'll remember, because I'm lazy and sleepy and went to bed after I unplugged it. So overnight, they pretty much stopped processing. So no bubbles or anything today. They're not still cooking away, but they are all sealed. Every one of them, 100% success. So our chicken pot pie filling is done. The only thing we will need to do before we put it into our crust is to add a little thickener. So flour, cornstarch, something like that to thicken it up before you cook it. And that's it. Thank you for joining us at Homestead for Life. Have a great day.